Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of art and culture. Right? In the yesterday's class, we finished the last part of the Indian paintings, which was your folk art. जहां पे हमने folk arts के different different तरीके देखे, paintings देखी कि exactly क्या बनती है, significance कैसे है. That was the thing which we saw in yesterday's class. And towards the last 10 minutes of the class, what we started doing was we started doing a new topic known as the Indian architecture, right? We started doing Indian architecture. That was the new topic which we started in the yesterday's class, right? So जब Indian architecture की जब हम बात कर रहे थे in yesterday's class, when we were talking about the Indian architecture, right? तो उसके अंदर हमने एग्जैक्टली ये चीज स्टार्ट करी थी बात करना कि दैट इट इज आल्सो डिवाइडेड इनटू थ्री फेजेस, एंशिएंट, मिडीवल एंड मॉडर्न. जो एंशिएंट के अंदर आते हैं पार्ट्स, दैट आर योर हड़प्पा, यस गुड, मौर्यंस, यस मौर्यंस, पोस्ट मौर्यंस, and finally your Gupta age, right? These are the four basic heads under which we need to study the Indian architecture in the ancient times, right? That is the basic idea. And in this ancient wala classification, we have already covered Harappa in the ancient Indian history class, where we were talking about the town planning, drainage system, folk art, and how exactly these people used various techniques for making the bronze statue, right? That was the basic thing which we studied in the Harappan civilization. Then we also talked about the pottery and everything in the ancient Indian history class itself. So I will consider the Harappan part as being done, right? I will not dwell into this particular topic for now, right? You can actually see the previous lectures if you want to get more information about the Harappan art and architecture. I will move directly to the Mauryan time period, right? I will move directly to the Mauryan time period. And just for a simple recap, मॉडर्न का जो टाइम पीरियड है दैट इज एक्चुअली स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 324 BC and lasting until 187 or 185 BC, right? That is the time period of the Mauryans, right? That will be our major point of concern in today's class, first of all, right? So ये हम सबसे पहले पढ़ेंगे. लेकिन before I start discussing anything, let me give you a brief introduction कि मॉरियंस के टाइम पे आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर कैसे डेवलप हुआ, कैसे उसमें नए नए इनोवेशंस एग्जैक्टली हम देख सकते हैं, राइट? तो सुनो, बेसिक पॉइंट यहां पर ये है, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द मॉडर्न एज, ठीक है, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द मॉडर्न एज, वी आर गोइंग टू सी अ न्यू रिलीजियस आइडियाज beginning to take shape. New religious ideas like the Jainism, like the Buddhism, ये सारे नए नए आइडियाज एग्जैक्टली हमारे सामने निकल के आ रहे हैं और इनकी बेसिक फिलोसफी इज काइंड ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंसिंग द माइंड्स ऑफ द किंग्स, इन्फ्लुएंसिंग द माइंड्स ऑफ द कॉमन पीपल. व्हेन वी वर स्टडीइंग एंशिएंट इंडिया, हमने एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग चीज ये देखी थी दैट बुद्धिज्म एंड जैनिज्म वर एक्चुअली अ रिएक्शन टू द ब्राह्मणिकल सुपीरियरिटी. इट वाज अ रिएक्शन टू द ब्राह्मणिकल kind of control on the society. तो वो सब चीजें हैं, इट वॉज एक्चुअली अ रिएक्शन, ठीक है. अब धीरे धीरे जैनिज्म और बुद्धिज्म के आइडियाज और ज्यादा डेवलप होने लग गए फ्रॉम द टाइम ऑफ मौर्यंस. व्हाई? बिकॉज द किंग्स लाइक चंद्रगुप्त, किंग्स लाइक समुद्रगुप्त, किंग्स लाइक योर अशोका, these people also started giving patronage to the Buddhism and Jainism religion, right? So this is the basic idea. जैसे चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य है, he gave more and more kind of patronage to Jainism, right? And then your Samundragupta, he gave more patronage to your Ajivika sect, right? Ajivika sect, Ajivika sect. तो अजीविका सेक्ट के अंदर बेसिक पॉइंट ये था, the people who believed in this particular philosophy, they said that everything is already determined. जो नियति है, जो हमारी डेस्टिनी है, जो हमारे साथ होना है, वो होके ही रहेगा. अब हम चाहे कुछ अच्छे काम कर लें या बुरे काम कर लें, थिंग्स आर नॉट गोइंग टू चेंज. जो हमारी नियति है या डेस्टिनी है, वो एग्जैक्टली डिसाइड कर चुकी है कि हमारे साथ लाइफ में क्या होना है और क्या नहीं होना है. Right? So Samundragupta also gave patronage to Ajivika sect. And Ashoka. Ashoka, to everybody know that he converted to Buddhism, and after getting converted to Buddhism, right, he gave more and more patronage to Buddhism. उसके टाइम पे थर्ड बुद्धिस्ट काउंसिल भी हुआ था. He even sent his son and daughter Mahindra and Sangamitra to various places, to Sri Lanka and other places, to spread Buddhism. उसने अपने टाइम पे एक मेजर बुद्धिस्ट आर्किटेक्चर को और ज्यादा बढ़ावा दिया था, which is known as your stupa, right? That is how exactly during the time of Mauryans, a different kind of architectural things started to come into prominence, right? And that was because of the prevalence of the ideas known as Buddhism and Jainism. That is something which we need to understand. और जो भी उनका आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर होगा उस टाइम पे, it will be mainly influenced by your these religion, that is Buddhism and Jainism. Because whatever we make, whatever we think, whatever we write, it's all part of our culture. And during the time of Mauryans, Buddhism specifically was very, very prominent. So people and the king, they were more kind of influenced by these particular idea, and it is very much reflected in their architecture also. So that is something which we need to understand first of all when we are talking about the art and architecture of the Mauryan phase. जब तक हमें पॉलिटिकल सोशल कंडीशंस नहीं समझ में आएंगी, जब तक हम उस टाइम का आर्किटेक्चर नहीं समझ सकते, राइट? आपको एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग चीज बताता हूँ. So people who study medieval India, specifically I'm giving you an example. People who do PhDs in medieval India, तो आर्किटेक्चर में भी PhD करते हैं. आर्किटेक्चर से वो ये नहीं है कि सिर्फ क्या यूज करा, कैसे बनाया, क्या करा. When they study architecture, they are also able to find out the socio-political conditions at that particular point of time. उस टाइम पे कैसा सिचुएशन रहा होगा. Like for example, you can see शाहजहां. शाहजहां ने बनाया ताजमहल. So when Shah Jahan made Taj Mahal, and it was made in completely marble, right? पूरा marble में बनाया, which is a very very expensive stone. तो कहीं ना कहीं हमसे ये चीज समझ सकते हैं that during the time of Shah Jahan, the things, the economy was growing on a very very large scale. The trade and also the Mughal polity was in a kind of very very peaceful existence. ज्यादा वॉर नहीं हो रही थी. अगर वॉर हो रही होती तो शाहजहां का ध्यान आर्किटेक्चर बनाने पे, पेंटिंग बनाने पे नहीं होता, उसका ध्यान उन वॉर्स को खत्म करने पे हो रहा था. ये वॉर्स हो रही थी, नॉट इन अ वेरी वेरी मेजर सेंस. सो दैट इज हाउ एग्जैक्टली आर्किटेक्चर इज ऑल्सो एन इंडिकेटर ऑफ द सोशियो पॉलिटिकल कंडीशंस prevalent at that particular point of time. इसी तरीके से जो मॉडर्न आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर है, that is kind of marker of the religious currents, that is Jainism and Buddhism, prevalent during that particular point of time. तो ये चीज मैं तुम्हें exactly पहले समझाना चाहता था before going into any sort of explanation of the art and architecture of that particular time, right? So this is something which you should know. Right? Okay. Fine. So we will start off with Mauryan. We will start off with Mauryan art and architecture. Mauryan art and architecture. So that is something which we are going to start in today's class. Right? We are going to start that. But before that, I also have to tell you another important idea, that is the difference between architecture and your sculpture. That is the difference between architecture and sculpture. Architecture and sculpture, right? Architecture, sculpture. What do you think is architecture and sculpture के बीच में difference? What do you people think is the difference between the architecture and sculpture? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, good. Point is, सिंपल भाषा में पहले समझते हैं, देन वी विल राइट द डिफरेंसेस. ठीक है. अब जो एक आर्किटेक्चर है, आर्किटेक्चर इज वेरी ह्यूज इन एक्सपांस. इट आर्किटेक्चर के आपके पास एग्जांपल्स है, रेड फोर्ट, सांची स्तूपा, और बहुत सारे एग्जांपल्स हैं आर्किटेक्चर के. ये तो सब हिस्ट्री में से एग्जांपल हो गए. आर्किटेक्चर की बिल्डिंग्स आप मॉडर्न सेंस में भी उन्हें देख सकते हो. लाइक इफ यू गो टू गुड़गांव, you see the DLF wale building. They are part of your architecture, although in the present times, but they are part of your architecture. So their architecture actually is a kind of a huge building kind of construction activity. Right? Basically, architecture involves lots and lots of manpower. Right? उसके अंदर बहुत सारी मैन पावर लगता है, उसके अंदर इंजीनियरिंग लगती है. राइट? अब आप आर्किटेक्चर बना रहे हो, ठीक है, आप एक बिल्डिंग बना रहे हो फॉर एग्जाम्पल, राइट? तो उसमें क्या है कि फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू नीड टू मेक द मैप ऑफ अ बिल्डिंग, राइट? तो पहले आप सिविल इंजीनियरिंग की हेल्प, जो सिविल इंजीनियर्स हैं उनकी हेल्प लोगे, एंड देन दे विल कंस्ट्रक्ट अ मैप कि हाँ किस जगह पे क्या हमें कंस्ट्रक्ट करना है, वॉशरूम्स कहाँ पे कंस्ट्रक्ट होंगे, लिविंग एरिया कहाँ पे कंस्ट्रक्ट होगा, राइट? तो वो सब चीजें एग्जैक्टली पहले एक ड्राइंग्स और मैप्स बनाए जाएंगे, देन द एक्चुअल प्लान विल बी एग्जीक्यूटेड, राइट? सो आर्किटेक्चर एक्चुअली इन्वॉल्व्स अ लॉट्स एंड लॉट्स ऑफ प्लानिंग, राइट? और उसके अंदर बहुत सारे बिल्डिंग मटेरियल भी यूज होते हैं आर्किटेक्चर के अंदर, लाइक योर सीमेंट, राइट, योर टीएनटी बार्स, राइट, योर ब्रिक्स, योर ग्लासेस, योर वुड. तो एक बिल्डिंग को बनाने के लिए there are various kinds of construction materials which are actually used, right? So that is your architecture, right? That is the basic meaning of architecture, that it is huge in size. And जो आर्किटेक्चर सपोजिटली बिल्डिंग की हम बात कर रहे हैं, जैसे मुगल्स ने भी बनाए, रेड फोर्ट मुगल्स ने बनाया, राइट? मुगल्स ने जामा मस्जिद बनाया, मुगल्स ने और रेड फोर्ट आगरा बनाया, फतेहपुर सीकरी बनाया, राइट? या प्रेजेंट डे आर्किटेक्चर अगर हम देखते हैं, तो जो आर्किटेक्चर का यूजेज है, दैट इज फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ द ह्यूमन बींग्स. वहां पर ह्यूमन बींग्स रह सकते हैं, वहां पर ह्यूमन बींग्स कोई कल्चरल एक्टिविटीज कर सकते हैं. सो बेसिकली यूटिलिटेरियन और यूटिलिटेरियन, वट एवर यू वॉन्ट टू से, दैट इज द होल पर्पस ऑफ आर्किटेक्चर. अपनी यूज के लिए. ऐसा तो नहीं ना कि बिल्डिंग बना के छोड़ दी अभी और उसके अंदर कोई नहीं रह रहा. You actually live in that building, so it is for the use. So that is the basic meaning of your architecture. अब आता है हमारा sculpture. So when we talk about sculpture, what we need to understand, sculpture का basic meaning है, basic से basic meaning है मूर्ति, your idol making, right? You make मूर्ति. जब आप मूर्ति बनाते हो, you do not need much knowledge of engineering, much knowledge of mathematics. मूर्ति बनाने के टाइम पे योर क्रिएटिविटी इज मच मोर इंपॉर्टेंट. जैसे जैसे दिमाग में आपके आइडियाज आते रहेंगे, वैसे वैसे मूर्ति आपके सामने निखर के आती रहेगी. तो योर क्रिएटिविटी, योर आइडियाज आर मच मोर इंपॉर्टेंट इन द स्कल्पचर मेकिंग. दैट इज व्हाट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड, राइट? और स्कल्पचर के अंदर मोस्टली एक सिंगल मटेरियल से ही पूरा का पूरा स्कल्पचर बन जाता है. एक सिंगल स्टोन से, मतलब एक पूरा एक बड़ा रॉक होगा, उसके अंदर से हम पूरी की पूरी एक मूर्ति कार्व आउट कर सकते हैं, राइट? सो दैट इज द बेसिक आइडिया. एंड स्कल्पचर क्ले से भी बनता है, प्लास्टर ऑफ पेरिस से भी बनता है, तो बहुत सारी चीजें हैं इसमें. Statue of Unity actually consists of your iron, your stones, everything. It consists. It's a sculpture. Around the area can be architect, but the point is it is not utilitarian. You cannot use it. Can you use it? It's just, I'll tell you once the class is over. I'll tell you what is the use of it. Right? I can't tell you right now. But I'll tell you. Right? मैंने कहा ना उसका एरिया जो आसपास है, that is a part of your architecture because that is for the tourist and everything, right? But the मूर्ति वाला जो पूरा है, ऐसा तो पूरा अपना स्टैच्यू ऑफ लिबर्टी भी है, that is also part, like उसके अंदर भी बहुत सारी चीजें यूज करी गई हैं. So there are always some certain kinds of exceptions. Sculptures जो हम बेसिकली देखते हैं वो मोस्टली जो मूर्ति हैं which are very smaller in shape and size. मूर्तियां जो कि आप मंदिरों की दीवारों पे भी देख सकते हो, मूर्तियां जो आप बाजार में बिकती हैं वो भी, दे आर ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ योर sculptures, right? So this is what we understand the difference between architecture and sculpture, right? So let's write some differences and then we will move on to the next thing, right? The first is in the size and scope. In the size and scope. Size and scope. Yes. Size and scope. कि यूज स्कोप मतलब उसका यूज क्या होता है, जैसे मैं देर से बता रहा हूँ. यस, करेक्ट स्वाति, करेक्ट मनोरिका, स्वाति करेक्ट, रोजल करेक्ट, करेक्ट अनिल perfect, Abhishek perfect, Manorika perfect. So everybody has an idea. Okay, fine. Let's write the differences. Size and scope. First is for architecture. First is for architecture. Most of the times, it is very huge in nature. Most of the time, it is very huge in nature, and is made for the purpose of the use by the human beings, like various monuments of Mughal times, etc. This is like you people must have studied about the Battle of Plassey. उसके अंदर एक बड़ा famous fort है, which is known as the Fort William. So Fort William was actually a part of your architecture itself. That was first of all used for the training of the civil servants who came from England and settled down in India, right? So this is how exactly the architecture is made. So the buildings are made for the use of the human beings, and that is something which we need to understand, right? Okay, fine. Sculpture. They are relatively smaller, and are mainly used for the aesthetic purposes. Aesthetic meaning pleasure and also like decorative items. जो pottery है, pottery is also a part of your sculpture. जो पूरी मूर्तियां, जब तुमने देखा होगा पीओपी की जो मूर्तियां होती है बड़ी बड़ी, जैसे ऐसे लेडीज खड़ी रहेंगी, ऐसी गर्दन या तो ऐसे रहेगी और यहाँ पे ऐसा मटका रहेगा, दैट इज ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ योर स्कल्पचर. उनका क्या यूज है? शो के लिए, राइट? और जब जैसे आई वेंट टू वन ऑफ द फार्म हाउसेस, ठीक है, एक छतरपुर में अपने पापा के फ्रेंड के, सो आई सॉ वो मूर्ति थी. तो वो जो मूर्ति थी तो मुझे लगा इसको रखा क्यों है, मुझे उसका पर्पस समझ नहीं आया. मतलब डेकोरेटिव ठीक है, लेकिन रखा मतलब कि ऑड सी लग रही थी. देन आई वाज लाइक कि पापा ये रखा क्यों है? पापा कहते इट इज मोर फॉर शोइंग ऑफ योर स्टेटस. मैंने कहा इसमें क्या स्टेटस, पीओपी की तो मूर्ति है. देन माय फादर टोल्ड मी दैट ईच इज अराउंड 5 लाख, ठीक है, 5 to 7 लाख के बीच में एक मूर्ति है. देन वो शॉक, यार एक छोटी सी मतलब कि अराउंड 5 फीट की मूर्ति सिर्फ पीओपी से, और ज्यादा डिजाइन भी नहीं है उसके अंदर, एंड इट्स कॉस्टिंग अराउंड 5 लाख। तो कहीं ना कहीं इट इज फॉर द एस्थेटिक पर्पसेज इटसेल्फ, राइट। तो स्कल्पचर्स, आपके स्कल्पचर्स के अंदर आपकी पॉटरी भी आती है। एंड माइंड, ये जो पॉटरी है, ये तो हम नॉर्मल पॉटरी खरीद लाते हैं, जैसे दिवाली पे दिए खरीद लिए या गर्मियों में मटका खरीद लिया। ऐसे ऐसे पॉटरी भी आते हैं विच आर यूज फॉर द डेकोरेटिव पर्पसेस, राइट, बहुत ज्यादा डेकोरेटिव पर्पसेस के लिए। और वो जो पॉटरी में होता है, डिजाइन सब कुछ है, दे आर ऑल्सो वेरी वेरी एक्सपेंसिव। 3 लाख, 4 लाख, 5 लाख, जितना तुम्हें दिखेगा उतना एक्सपेंसिव चीजें हैं। तो जितना ज्यादा ब्यूटिफुली बनाया है, जितना ज्यादा एक रेयर तरीके से उसको बनाया है, तो वो उतना ज्यादा एक्सपेंसिवली दिखेगा भी, राइट। तो दिस इज हाउ एग्जैक्टली sculpture is mostly for aesthetic purposes, like the paintings. Paintings के folk arts हैं, it mostly for the expression of your culture. लेकिन जैसे modern art है, modern art, I think, I might be wrong, modern art is mostly for your aesthetic purposes. It kahin na kahin it is for the aesthetic purposes. When it is selling for 2 crore, 3 crore, so it is mostly for the aesthetic purposes, right? Although it has some inherent message, but kahin na kahin log apne drawing room ko sajane ke liye they buy the paintings, right? Okay. Next point of difference is the material used. Is the material used. Is the material used. Okay. Material used. Variety of materials, architecture का point है. Variety of material, variety of material, like like bricks, like bricks, cement, stone, iron, etc. Iron, etc. Right? So that is being used in the architecture. Like बड़ी interesting चीज है. I saw a fort, बाला किला, सरिस्का नेशनल पार्क के पास, and they have constructed, उनकी पूरी fortification wall है, they have constructed them in such a kind of strong manner कि वो अब तक उसकी वॉल को कुछ हुआ ही नहीं है, एक्सेप्ट थोड़ी थोड़ी जगहों पे डैमेज है, अदरवाइज दे आर स्टिल इंटैक्ट, राइट। तो जो पहले के टाइम पे जो आर्किटेक्चर बिल्डिंग्स बनते थे, दे वर मच मोर स्ट्रॉन्गर। अगर तुम मुगल्स के मॉन्यूमेंट्स देखो, दिल्ली सल्तनत के मॉन्यूमेंट्स देखो, most of them have already, they have survived, they have survived for the last 600 years, 700 years। और अभी के जो बिल्डिंग्स हैं, राइट, अभी के जो बिल्डिंग्स होते हैं, वो मुश्किल से मतलब कि अगर चल जाए 30 ईयर्स 40 ईयर्स तक अगर चल जाए तो इट्स फाइन, खराब होना स्टार्ट हो जाती है, बट 10 ईयर्स तक के बाद तो वो पूरा का पूरा ऐसे खराब होना स्टार्ट हो जाती है, देन यू हैव टू रिपेयर देम, राइट। और मैं बताता हूँ, इन माई विलेज इन राजस्थान, तो वो लोग क्या करते थे, देख हमने पूरा हवेली ववेली जो देखा है वहां पे, तो वो स्टोन्स को ना इस तरीके से सेटअप करते थे कि उन्हें सीमेंट लगाने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ती थी, राइट। वो स्टोन्स को एक तरह से ऐसे पूरा 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 ऐसे जोड़ते चले जाते थे कि दे डिड नॉट इवन यूज द सीमेंट एज द बाइंडिंग एजेंट। और उस तुम दीवार को तोड़ के दिखा दो आसानी से, इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल, राइट। अभी तुम सीमेंट लगाई हुई दीवार को तोड़ दो, 3 से 4 साल बाद वो दीवार बिल्कुल आराम से टूट जाएगी। लेकिन जो दीवार विच आई हैव सीन इन माय विलेज इन राजस्थान, सो दैट वॉल स्टिल इंटैक्ट। और मुझे जब बता रहे थे मेरे दादाजी एंड एवरीवन कि ये जो हवेली है उनके एंसेस्टर्स ने बनाई थी अराउंड 300 ईयर्स बैक, एक हवेली ने दिखाई 200 ईयर्स बैक, तो हवेली का सिर्फ पेंट वेंट खराब हुआ है, कुछ जगह थोड़ा बहुत डैमेज हुआ है, अदरवाइज एवरीथिंग इज परफेक्ट, राइट। तो वो एक चीज है, वे ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑल्सो अंडरगोज अ चेंज, राइट। ओके फाइन, मटेरियल यूज उसमें हो गया। एंड स्कल्पचर, नाउ द स्कल्पचर, mostly a single material, mostly a single material is being used. Mostly a single material is being used. Single material is being used, like stone, clay, iron, plaster of Paris, bronze, बहुत सारी चीजें, ब्रास, राइट। ब्रास से याद आया, आई हैव सीन द ब्रास पॉटरी इन द सिटी पैलेस ऑफ जयपुर, जहां पर बहुत बड़े बड़े वहां पर उन्होंने पॉट्स रख रखे हैं। सो दैट इज ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ स्कल्पचर इटसेल्फ, लेकिन वो बहुत बड़ा, मतलब कि just understand they are approximately my height. I am 5'11". They're approximately मेरी height से बड़े होंगे यार वो, like if I remember them correctly. And that is also made out of a single piece of building material. That is brass, right? I think it's brass. Right? तो वो एक interesting चीज है. Right? So this is the basic idea in the sculpture. Third difference is, third difference is about the way of making. I'll just write it here. Way of making. Way of making. Way of making. बनाने का तरीका क्या है? मोस्टली जो घर होते हैं उनकी जो सीलिंग होती है दैट इज एट द हाइट ऑफ 9 फीट, राइट? 9 फीट की सीलिंग होती है मोस्टली जगहों पे, और जो उनका गेट होता है एंट्रेंस का वो भी अराउंड 7.5 के अराउंड होता है, क्योंकि क्या होता है वो एवरेज हाइट लेके चलते हैं 6। अब अगर उससे छोटा वो बना देंगे, पॉइंट इज पीपल हैव टू मूव इनसाइड लाइक दिस, बड़ा मतलब कि ज्यादा बड़ा बना देंगे तो वो और लगता है, राइट? तो दे हैव टू टेक अ स्पेसिफिक साइज। तो अभी क्या है, मैं थोड़ा इधर उधर पुराने कंस्ट्रक्शन स्टाइल पे जा रहा हूँ। सो आई स्टडीड इन हिंदू कॉलेज, यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ दिल्ली, ठीक है? तो अब जो हमारे प्रोफेसर्स के घर थे दे वर अराउंड 110 115 इयर्स ओल्ड, ब्रिटिशर्स के टाइम के थे, और जो उनकी छत होती थी ना, सीलिंग, दैट वाज वे टू ह्यूज, बहुत बड़ी होती थी। तो अब देन आई आस्क्ड माय प्रोफेसर सर व्हाट इज द पॉइंट ऑफ मेकिंग सच स्ट्रक्चर। सो ही वाज लाइक कि जो गर्मी होती है तो वो ज्यादा गर्मी फील नहीं होती क्योंकि छत आपकी थोड़ी और ऊपर है, राइट? तो जो पूरी हीट है वो एकदम नीचे ट्रांसफर नहीं होती है, राइट? क्योंकि उसके ऊपर बहुत स्पेस है, सीलिंग के बीच में और आपके बीच में काफी स्पेस है, राइट? तो इसलिए गर्मी कम फील होती है। तो राइट, तो दैट इज द बेसिक आइडिया कि कंस्ट्रक्शन में पहले दिमाग लगाते थे, पहले आप ज्यादा आइडियाज लगा के काम करते थे इन कंपेरिजन टू टुडेज टाइम, right? I don't know what kind of technology they are using in the Gurgaon buildings to save electricity, but the point is when you see the DLF building and everything, so they are always having this glass windows and full glass cover in the front. So glass actually traps the greenhouse gases. So it actually makes the building even more kind of hotter, warmer. So you need to use more and more AC, air conditioning has to be at its maximum. So this is the basic idea कि कहीं ना कहीं आजकल आर्किटेक्चर को ज्यादा सुंदर दिखाने के चक्कर में the whole idea of its usage has been put to frozen chamber. Right? उसका use ही खत्म कर दिया उन्होंने. So this is how exactly the early architecture was being made in India and other places. Right? Where were we? Third point we have to start. Okay, third one. Okay, fine. Way of making. So in the architecture, way of making in the architecture, study of engineering, study of engineering, study of engineering, along with detailed and accurate measurement, along with detailed and accurate measurements are required. Accurate measurements are required. Right? You have to do that. जब तक आपको पूरा proper measurement नहीं पता है, so then that is a problem. I'll tell you. Yes, एक family में somebody was getting his basement constructed मॉडल टाउन में. तो अब क्या हुआ, उसने बेसमेंट के अंदर जेसीबी ऐसे चलवा दिया कि साथ वाला जो घर था तो उसके में पूरे क्रैक्स आने लग गए. So he had to pay the extra amount of money to that particular person. So that is why you have to be very specific while the architecture is being constructed, right? So that is the basic idea, right? And then the sculpture, it depends upon the imagination. It depends upon the imagination and creativity. It depends upon the imagination and creativity of the human beings. Imagination and creativity of the human beings. जो आपके दिमाग से निकल गया, right? That is a part of your sculpture. 40 को कुछ भी डिजाइन दे दिया. I went to Tijara on the way back from Sariska. During the weekend, I went to Tijara. So Tijara में the Jain people must be knowing it, right? Tijara is a very, very kind of टेम्पल विच इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इन द जैन रिलीजन। तो उसमें दिए होते हैं, एक बड़ा दिया, उसमें बेसिकली आई जस्ट ट्राई टू शो यू अ काइंड ऑफ इमेजिनेटिव एस्पेक्ट इन द स्कल्पचर मेकिंग। तो दिया एक ऐसा बड़ा होता है और उन्होंने एक बीच में एक ऐसा दिया बना रखा है और यहाँ पे पूरा ऐसा एक वो होती है, कॉटन की पूरी बत्ती होती है, राइट। तो दिए के बीच में एक छोटा दिया एंड दैट इज आई थिंक अटैच्ड टू दैट बड़ा वाला दिया। सो दैट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ योर इमेजिनेशन, दैट इज हाउ एग्जैक्टली द स्कल्पचर इज बीइंग मेड। एक मूर्ति, राइट, जो मूर्ति होती है कुछ भी है, that is the part of your imagination, right? So that is how exactly you need to understand the differences between the sculpture and the architecture, right? So that is the basic idea. Now let's move on to the Mauryan art. Now let's move on to the Mauryan art. Before I move on to the Mauryan art, I have taken a screenshot for you people. I've taken a screenshot for you people for the importance of today's date. Why is today's date very, very important? So I'm going to tell you that, and then we are going to move forward. Right? Okay. Fine. आज क्या डेट है सबसे पहले बताओ? 24th November is the date. So on 24th November 1675 something happened. 1675 something happened. What happened? Anybody? What happened on this particular day, 24th November 1675? Jaldi, jaldi, jaldi. Then I have to move forward also. Tell me. हाँ, चलो तुम लोग भी जल्दी जल्दी बताओ. Yes, Abhishek, you are correct. Priya, you are also correct over here. Yes, Ruby. Fine. नहीं. Okay, I'll tell you. So 24th November 1675. Please write this. Right? 24. Just make a box. Right? उसके ऊपर अगर तुम्हें heading भी लिखना है, in order to make it more fancy, write significance of the today's date. जैसे हिंदू में वो आर्टिकल आते हैं ना सारे एडिटोरियल, उसके साइड में आई थिंक या राइटिंग साइड एक्सट्रीम, ठीक है, उसके अंदर वो सब लिखा होता है फ्रॉम द आर्काइव्स, तो उसको तुम लिख सकते हो इसको सेम तरीके से, सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ टुडेज डेट, राइट। सो ऑन 24th November, on 24th November 1675, 24th November 1675, the ninth Sikh Guru, the ninth Sikh Guru, ninth Sikh Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur, Guru Tegh Bahadur, Guru Tegh Bahadur was beheaded, was beheaded, 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 was beheaded in Chandni Chowk, was beheaded in Chandni Chowk on the orders of Aurangzeb. Who else? कौन करेगा ऐसे काम? It's Aurangzeb. उस सन की किसका दिमाग था? औरंगजेब, राइट। एक या तो मोहम्मद बिन तुगलक या औरंगजेब, ये दो ऐसे, या फिर मोहम्मद शाह रंगीला भी बाद में आके आता है, लेकिन अभी 1675 है। You need to understand, अगर he, this Sikh Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur ji, if he hasn't beheaded in 1675, then कहीं ना कहीं chronological order of the Mughal Empire becomes important, because 1675 में the Mughal king was your Aurangzeb, 1658 to 1707. That is why I always tell you to remember the exact time period of the Mughal Empire of the Delhi Sultanate, important kings, right? So he was beheaded चांदनी चौक में, ठीक है। सो ये इंपॉर्टेंस है आज के डेट का। और कौन सा गुरुद्वारा है चांदनी चौक में विच इज डेडिकेटेड टू हिम? सीसगंज साहिब, because it is being like written and it is being told to us that the head, when it was beheaded, publicly beheaded by Aurangzeb. So it actually fell on the site where we have the Sheeshganj Sahib today, right? That was a place जहां पर पूरा का पूरा ये चीज हुई थी, right? So that is what we need to understand. और क्यों हुआ था? Why exactly this particular thing happened? Can anybody tell me this? Sikh revolt, okay. Anything else? Sun, okay. Okay, the basic reason which is being told in the history books and everything is there are two. First of all, Guru Tegh Bahadur said, I know magic. So Aurangzeb wanted to convert into Islam. These are two things which are related, right? So when Aurangzeb told him to perform magic or otherwise convert to Islam, right? So Guru Tegh Bahadur, as it is said, was not able to perform magic at that particular point of time, and he also refused to convert to Islam. तो मैजिक वैजिक से औरंगजेब को फर्क नहीं पड़ता था. औरंगजेब को फर्क इस चीज से पड़ रहा है that Guru Tegh Bahadur is not converting to Islam. So his refusal to convert to Islam actually led to the death of Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur on 24th November 1675. Right? And also, yeah, Manoharika, he helped his son. That is also true. So this is what we need to understand when we are talking about such things. Right? This is, मैंने बताया दो चीजें related थी. तो magic था, and then along with magic, he wanted Guru Tegh Bahadur to convert to Islam. These are two ideas. Right? Now, right? इसलिए today's date is important. Right? This is what you need to understand. Right? Okay, now let's go to the Mauryan phase. Now let's go to the Mauryan phase and understand the Mauryan art and architecture. Right? Okay. So now let's come to the main topic. The problem has been resolved. Now let's come to the main topic. That is the Mauryan art and architecture. Right? Thank you, Priya. We did the same thing. Thank you for the suggestion. So when we talk about the modern art and architecture, right? So this is the image. I've already written the source also, where exactly I have taken it from, right? So this particular image actually tells us that the modern art was divided into two parts, right? So it was actually classified into two ideas, modern art. एक तो था court art, right? Court art का मतलब होता है the thing which is made by the kings, right? That is the court art made by the kings. So उसको कहते हैं court art. और जो court art होती है basically, that is very very huge in nature. Palaces, pillars, stupas. देखिए stupas जो है फिर भी common लोग बना लेते हैं, लेकिन जो palaces हैं खासकर, they are actually made by the kings. Do you think Red Fort could have been made by any common person or any common rich person? It cannot be made because it requires lots and lots of labor mobilization. It requires lots and lots of raw material. It requires lots of tax collection, continuous flow of money. If Taj Mahal supposedly was being made for 22 years, so just imagine कि कितना मैन पावर लगा होगा, कितने टैक्सेस उसके अंदर लगे होंगे, कितना मटेरियल लगा होगा. Common people cannot do that, right? Only the people like the kings in the earlier times, they were able to kind of mobilize such a kind of activity, right? That is what we need to understand. So that was their court art. और court art के अंदर आपके आते हैं palaces, आपके आते हैं pillars. Pillars of something which were erected by your Ashoka, right? They were erected by Ashoka. या तो उसने कैसे बुद्धिज्म के मैसेज को बताने के लिए लोगों को पिलर्स लगाए उसने, और किसने लगाए थे उसने पिलर्स? वी हैव ऑलरेडी डिस्कस दीस थिंग्स कि अशोका ने एग्जैक्टली पिलर्स क्यों लगाए. एक तो बुद्धिज्म के मैसेज को स्प्रेड करने के लिए, राइट? स्टूपस तो है ही इसके अंदर, और पिलर्स उसने क्या लगाए? बाउंड्री मार्कर्स कि मेरा जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है वो यहां तक है, इसके आगे किसी और का स्टार्ट होता है. That was also a very interesting idea. रोड को गाइड करने के लिए उसने पूरे पिलर्स बनाए. तो बाउंड्री मार्कर्स, स्प्रेड ऑफ रिलीजियस आइडियाज, वो सब पिलर्स एग्जैक्टली अशोका के टाइम पे बनते हुए नजर आते हैं. राइट. सो आई विल शो यू कि पिलर आर्किटेक्चर कैसे बना है. देन द स्तूपास. स्तूपास मैंने कल भी बताया था, दे वर एक्चुअली मेड आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ योर बुद्धा इन द मेजर फॉर्म. उससे पहले से बनते आ रहे हैं, but after the death of Buddha, they began to gain prominence. So they were also part of your court art or the art constructed by the kings. Right? उसके बाद जो second classification है, that is the popular art. Popular का मतलब ये नहीं कि popular का मतलब ये नहीं कि बहुत ज्यादा famous. Popular actually means the things which are being done by the common people. Like जैसे एक एक्टर है, एक एक्टर लाइक सलमान खान. He is famous, right? Without talent though. He is famous. Why? Because he is able to connect with the majority population of India. Right? Majority population of India does not want to see serious logical stuff on the cinema screens. They want to see something which is beyond the reality. Right? That is known as a popular art, which is being liked by people, common people. जो common लोगों के दिमाग में बैठ जाए चीज, that is a part of your popular art. Like I'll just give you a name of the movie. There was a movie known as Fitur. Fitur. Fitur was like, according to me, right, it is one of the very good movies which has been made in India. Fitur is on the Kashmir and everything. It wrote बहुत सारी movies हैं, but most of the people will not like that because it is something which is very serious stuff, which is very logical stuff. On the other hand, people will like movies like Reddy. People will like movies like Dabang. Why? Because they are common with the common people, right? They are popular with the common people. So जो art forms जो है, which were being made by the individual initiative, which were being made by the common people, they were known as the popular art. जैसे pottery. Pottery एक आम इंसान बना सकता है, right? There is no doubt in that. Sculptures, I have already told you, मूर्ति है, right? उसको कॉमन इंसान बना सकता है. Caves, caves एक कॉमन इंसान बना सकता है. जैसे कि कुछ मॉडर्न टाइम्स के किंग्स भी केव्स बनाते थे और कॉमन पीपल भी कुछ केव्स हैं, उसको थोड़ा बहुत डेकोरेट करा दिया, उसके अंदर थोड़े बहुत चीजें रखवा दी. दैट कैन ऑल्सो बी डन बाय द कॉमन. मॉल्स भी बना सकते हैं. इट डज नॉट नेसेसरीली हैव टू बी ऑफ वेरी इलाबोरेट डिजाइन. जो कॉमन लोग आर्किटेक्चर बनाते हैं तो वो उसमें डिफरेंस होता है जो किंग आर्किटेक्चर बनाता है. इट्स लाइक द सेम थिंग. पीपल हु आर वेरी रिच और पीपल हु आर लाइक मी, तो हमारे कार्स में फर्क तो होता ही है ना. पीपल हु आर वेरी रिच, they have their Jaguars, their Audis and BMWs. People like me who are not exactly very rich, so they have very small cars, right? So वो एक interesting point होता है, right? So that is what we need to understand when we are talking about it. तो ये एक interesting चीजें हैं which can be seen in the Mauryan art and architecture. कि उस टाइम पे kings भी बना रहे हैं और जो common people हैं, they are also making it. So they are being made by common people. So that is what we need to understand. Right? तो ये एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है मॉडर्न आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर में. ओके, लेट्स मूव फॉरवर्ड. पहले हम सबसे पहले देखेंगे द मॉडर्न कोर्ट आर्ट. मॉडर्न कोर्ट आर्ट. और मॉडर्न कोर्ट आर्ट के अंदर वी विल सी द पैलेसेस. वी विल सी द पैलेसेस, राइट? जो मेजॉरिटी पैलेस हैं जो मॉडर्न्स के टाइम पे बने हैं, राइट, तो वो पैलेसेस आर नॉट सर्वाइविंग इन द प्रेजेंट टाइम्स. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, सी दिस पैलेस. दिस इज द कुमराहार पैलेस which is in Patliputra, Patna. Kumrahar. Mera palace. This is the kind of remains. These are the remains. I'll just write it. These are the remains. I should have mentioned it कि palace क्या है. These are the remains of palace, right? नहीं, but this is the whole complex. पीछे वाला तो normal buildings. So why exactly they have not been able to survive modern palaces? Because their major building material was wood. They used to get the predominantly wood used in their palaces. That is why they have not survived for a very long point of time. So this is an example of the Kumrahar Palace, which is in your Patna, right? So that is something which we need to understand. So palace एक example है of the Mauryan art, right? क्या चीज ये like this is something which is already there जो थोड़ा बहुत survive कर गया है उसको ठीक ठाक shape जो है it has been given by ASI तो पूरा होता है ना restoration of the art forms तो वो एक चीज है so Kumrahar art and also you can see what the thing I was telling you the material used was the wood because उन्होंने wood use करा है the other things have not survived for a very long time right जो उनके palaces हैं पैलेसेस यहाँ पर थे उनकी ब्यूटी के बारे में और कैसे पता लगता है हमें पता लगता है थ्रू द बुक्स which were written by your Megasthenes right Megasthenes was an ambassador in the court of Chandragupta Maurya तो उसने एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग चीज देखी अपनी बुक इंडिका में that the palaces of the Mauryans were the most beautiful thing he has seen in his entire life right so this is how exactly we need to see things. Even the Chinese traveler, Fahin, he describes these particular things as something which is beyond imagination, right? God-gifted monuments. क्योंकि जैसे मैंने एक बताया, God जब लोगों को समझ में नहीं आता ना चीजें बनी कैसे होंगी, so then they think God-gifted. Like for example, the cave number 16 in Ellora, that is the Kailashnath temple. And that has been carved out of a single stone. And if you see the documentary Ancient Aliens, you will see that the people are claiming that the whole cave number 16 was actually constructed by the aliens. Because they say even today, this is they say that this is not possible even today. Right? So that is why Fahin must have seen these monuments and he must have told the people in his book that these are God-gifted monuments. Right? That is what we need to understand. Right? So ये एक interesting चीज है palaces हैं like ये सारे palaces के example I have already given. That is what like the Mauryan capital Patliputra the present name is Patna. So Kumrahar palace है Chandragupta Maurya का palace है so the Patliputra was their capital of the Mauryans. Right? So that is why the palaces will be there in the capital city. So that is why we find the examples of Kumrahar Palace and others in these particular region. So palaces are the one form of court art or the art which was being made by the kings and these royal people. Right? That is what we need to understand. Right? Next is your pillars. Right? Pillars were another art form which was being done by the kings, right? So I'll tell you a very interesting story about the pillar. Last year, I went to Sarnath. Last year, 2019, starting, I went to Sarnath. So Sarnath, I think what I think you people should think. Sarnath is the same place where Buddha gave his first sermon, right? So at that particular place, only Sarnath ke paas hi, I saw that whole pillar of Ashoka, Sarnath pillar. And to my kind of surprise, that 40 feet pillar of Ashoka was made out of a single stone. It was a monolithic structure. Although it is not surviving in the monolithic form right now, but when it was constructed, it was in the monolithic structure, right? पूरा का पूरा 40 feet का एक single stone से बनाया हुआ है, right? If I also have the pictures, लेकिन इस picture में क्योंकि वो पूरा का पूरा जो structure है अब उसके pieces हो गए हैं. अब pieces जो हो गए उन्होंने एक पूरे के पूरे एक छोटा सा basement सा बनाया है, उसके अंदर उसको रख दिया, उसके आसपास पूरे glasses बना दिए ताकि लोग जाके उसको और destroy ना कर दें. अब glasses में से जो picture जितनी clear आ पाई, I took that. So I thought of showing you that particular picture, but it was not exactly visible. So I decided against it. लेकिन जो pillars हैं, they're actually made out of a single stone, right? चुनार sandstone, ये बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जिससे वो exactly pillars बनते हैं, right? And the more important thing about the Mauryan pillars are their parts, right? Parts of the Mauryan pillars are also very, very important, right? Pillars, जो मैंने आपको already बताया, they were used as the boundary markers. They were used by Ashoka for spreading his message of religion. तो बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जिनमें ये pillars exactly use होते हैं, right? So this is what we need to understand. Now we will discuss things about your various parts of pillar, right? I already have this on my table, and when you people will become officers, you will also have this on your table, right? So this Sarnath pillar, right? So we should actually aim for this, right? So ये एक सबसे interesting part है. Now what we will do is we will understand the various parts of pillar. कि पिलर के अंदर एग्जैक्टली कौन कौन से पार्ट होते हैं और कौन कौन से नहीं होते हैं. सो दिस पर्टिकुलर पार्ट is known as the shaft or the base. This particular part is known as the shaft or the base. Shaft or the base. And the interesting part is made out of a single rock. Made out of a single rock, right? So that is something which we need to understand, right? So what you people should do is you should actually draw this in a very rough manner ताकि तुम्हें इसके parts जो हैं वो पता लग जाए, because in the exam they sometimes ask you the parts of the pillars, right? That is why I'm just taken a picture and going to explain you the parts myself. The shaft is the first thing which is there, and then above the shaft is another part which is known as your capital. Which is known as your capital. It is bell shaped. It is mostly bell shaped. Sometimes it is also lotus shaped. Sometimes it is also lotus shaped. So the first part is your shaft. Second is your capital. The thing above the base is your capital, which is bell shaped, right? Shaft, capital. अभी हम देखेंगे थर्ड वाला फेज. हाँ ये टूटा हुआ है. I'll show you after the class. I'll show you the picture. I have it with me. उस टू चले आगे. Done. Okay. So this is your capital. This is your shaft, and then comes this particular part, which is known as your abacus. Which is known as your abacus. So the part above capital is known as your abacus. Is known as your abacus. So up till now we have studied abacus, capital, shaft, right? Shaft, which is the base, right? So this is the basic idea. And then finally, these are the animal figures. On the top of the abacus are the animal figures. This is the fourth part. So any pillar has generally four parts: shaft, capital, abacus, and finally the animal figures, right? So that is something which you need to understand, right? So ये एक interesting point है, so which we have to see, right? Done. Everybody has drawn these. So until in the offline classes, I actually used to draw these, but my drawing was not very good, so I have adopted a new approach. This is good. This good, looks fine. So I have adopted this particular approach of having the pillar in front of me and then explaining the parts of these particular pillars, right? So that is the thing which we should understand, right? Okay. So ये हो गए हमारे pillars. So that was the pillar, and again, so that is just steps kind of thing, but that is not important for a part of study. right? So I have also mentioned all these things in these particular notes, right? And then I have also mentioned what are the similarities with the Persian pillars, right? What are the similarities and the dissimilarities of the Ashokan pillars with that of the Persian pillars, right? They're not very difficult, so you can actually see that on your own, right? This is again an example of the pillars, right? So that is what we need to understand. And then finally, what we have is the stupa. What we have is the stupa, right? So the parts of stupa are very, very important from the perspective of the prelims exam. They can actually ask you the various parts of stupa, right? And because they have a very different name, they can actually ask you the usage of that particular part. For example, these things, this is just an example, I explain the whole idea. These things, as you can see, are known as the Toran. And they can actually ask you what was the placement of the Toran, where was exactly it was placed. So it was placed at the 4 points, 4 cardinal directions at the entrance of the stupa, right? So that is what we have to understand. And once in the exam, they actually ask you what is Harmika. What do you mean by Harmika? That was a stone railing. And then your Medhi kya hota hai? Then what is your Anda? What is this particular dome known as? So these are various parts of stupa which we are going to study in the tomorrow's class, right? We are going to see each and every part of stupa, write their meaning and significance in our notebook. I'll keep on explaining the various parts and we can keep on writing those particular parts in the notebook. So tomorrow what we are going to do is we are going to complete this Mauryan art, which will take another 10 to 15 minutes, and then going to jump towards post-Mauryan arts. Post-Mauryan art में सबसे important idea है the sculptures के school Gandhara, Mathura and Amravati. They actually occur as questions in the mains exam. We are going to see that, right? So I'll see you people in tomorrow's class, and please revise whatever we have studied. If you still have some problem, you can actually mail me. So thank you and have a very nice day. Priya, as far as the notes are concerned, you can see that I've already given the notes. These are the things which are already there. You now have to ask the management for the notes, that when exactly they will be able to provide you with the notes.